This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do another 7-inch tablet Smackdown. This time we're going to have a Smackdown between the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus on the left and the Toshiba Thrive 7-inch on the right. Both run Android OS 3.2 Honeycomb, and we're going to compare them now. So today we're doing a Smackdown between the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus here on the left and the Toshiba Thrive 7-inch. Both are fairly new. The Samsung's been out for about a month. The Toshiba Thrive just came out about 10 days ago. And each has a 7-inch display, runs Android OS Honeycomb 3.2, and both are promised upgrades to Ice Cream Sandwich sometime in 2012. They're also priced very similarly. There's only a $20 difference between them, with the Samsung and 16 gig costing $399 and the Thrive costing $379. So how do you decide? We're here to help you find out. Usually our Smackdowns are pretty balanced, with each tablet having some strong points, and I'm afraid in this case the Samsung is probably going to win. But we'll start out with what the Toshiba's biggest strong point is, and that's its high resolution 1280 by 800 pixel display. That's the same resolution you'd find in a 10-inch Honeycomb tablet normally, whereas the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 goes with a more standard 1024 by 600 resolution. Fewer pixels on screen mean potentially less sharp photos and videos and text. However, 1024 by 600 is a pretty reasonable resolution for a 7-inch display, so you're really not going to notice the pixelation per se. Neither of these uses IPS displays, but they both have wide viewing angles, are bright and colorful. Now when we talk about the difference in display resolution, you can see it in the size of the icons. They're going to be bigger here on the Samsung and smaller there. Otherwise, the operating system mostly does a good job of compensating for differences in resolution and tries to keep user interface elements about the same size. But you'll see here when we tap on the menu, now granted these are customized by the manufacturer, but you see how large that is and how much of the screen that takes up versus the Toshiba. Takes up somewhat less space, but that's also because you don't get all these handy quick access things that Samsung adds with their TouchWiz. And that gets into another point. Each manufacturer can customize Android as they desire, and Samsung has added TouchWiz to this, and it's a lot more useful and nice compared to some of the early smartphone versions that we saw. And I like the things that they do here. For example, quick access to your wireless stuff and common settings, your brightness, all that's here. Whereas Toshiba goes for a much more vanilla implementation. Now, if you like vanilla Android better, then, well, the Toshiba is obviously the better choice for you. But if you like to have these handy-dandy access points and a lot of custom widgets and social networking software built in, custom calendar view, all that kind of stuff, then the Samsung has this appeal. Here we have basically just standard Google widgets. There are nothing else really here except for a couple of the third-party stuff that's loaded, like Kaspersky Antivirus actually has its own widget, for example. When we take a look at applications, when we take a look at the Samsung, we can see that their DLNA application is on board. We've also got their Media Hub for movie rental. We've got their Social Hub for social networking, Pen Memo. Funny that this does not particularly work with a pen other than a capacitive pen, but we've got a little memo application that they call Pen Memo here. And we've got a photo editor on board as well as their task editor. And on the Toshiba, pretty much standard stuff that you get with the OS. They have their own file manager on board to work with the micro SD card. A lot of card games for some reason. And antivirus software. And they've got their own video player built in addition to the standard Google one. So for resolution, obviously the Toshiba Thrive 7 wins. It's a higher resolution display. It's very sharp, very clear, really nice for reading ebooks. And if you like vanilla Android, it wins. However, if you prefer UI customization, some handy widgets, social networking stuff to get you going, and then it's going to be the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus. In terms of expandability, they're relatively similar. The Thrive 7 isn't like the Thrive 10, which had pretty much every port known to man on it. This guy just has micro HDMI. It has a mini USB port instead of micro USB, a little bit odd there. And it does not have USB host capability. The battery is not removable. The back is sealed on there. You have a micro SD card slot. The Galaxy Tab 7 Plus, wow, they actually finally added a micro SD card slot. Isn't that excellent? For some reason, the Tab 10, the bigger ones, they don't have that, but I guess Samsung's been listening to complaints and they've added that. There is still no HDMI out on this unless you buy Samsung's $20 or $30 dongle adapter that plugs into the 30-pin port at the bottom of the tablet. So of course the Samsung doesn't have a removable battery either, because it's a pretty rare feature on tablets, but it's worth mentioning for the Thrive 7 because the Thrive 10 was one of the few that actually had that feature. In terms of battery life, Samsung has a 4,000 milliamp battery. Toshiba only specifies theirs in watts per hour, which is 15 watts per hour. And they claim 2 hours shorter potential runtime versus the Samsung. We've seen about an hour or so different. We do get about an hour longer out of the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus. So we're talking about, say, 7 hours for the Samsung, depending on what you're using it for, of course, and about 6 to sometimes 5.5 on the Toshiba, depending on where your brightness settings are at. Brightness seems to affect it a bit more. In terms of looks and design, boy, these guys are pretty far apart on their concept of what a tablet should look like. You know Samsung, they always do ultra-thin, ultra-light tablets, a lot like the Apple iPad 2, and that's what they've done with the Galaxy Tab 7 Plus. It's very thin, it's very light. It's 0.39 inches, so actually it's a little bit thicker than the Galaxy Tab 10, the iPad 2, and the Motorola's iBoard 10, but it's still a very thin tablet. Toshiba, you can see, is thicker, chunkier design, and yes, this sticker is removable for those of you who hate stickers on the device. And it's got squared off sides. It actually makes it pretty easy to hold, so that's the nice part. And while Samsung has their kind of faux metal brushed finish here, it looks very beautiful, elegant looking. This has that Thrive 10 look, only miniaturized for the 7-inch. You've got this rubbery textured back, easy to hold on to, kind of feels like it might bounce off the sidework and live. But definitely a very different kind of design. This is going for that kind of rugged in a cute sort of way look. It's chunky. It's a bit heavier. It's 0.83 pounds versus 0.75 for the Galaxy Tab. And it has kind of bold accents here with that surrounder on the camera. I know some of you like that, some of you just don't like it at all. And you see them side by side. Definite difference in the looks there. And the ports are pretty much in the same location on both of these guys. Up top we've got volume, power buttons up here. This is the IR blaster for the IR remote. We'll get into that a little bit. That's something that's added on here. And this guy's hiding some more ports underneath the rubber door. And you can watch our full video review of the Thrive 7 to learn about it, but there's your micro SD card slot, your mini USB port, and the micro HDMI hiding under this rubber door, which is pretty easy to get on and off. Both have proprietary dock connectors at the bottom here, and that's where you plug in the charger, the Samsung, and they've got stereo speakers. Samsung may be smaller, but it is the louder when it comes to volume. And both have 3.5mm headphone jacks up top. And the Toshiba Thrive has a little white LED light here that pulses to let you know that it's asleep, which you might like, or it might drive you crazy if you have it on your bedstand at night and you're trying to sleep. Both of these are Wi-Fi only tablets right now, Wi-Fi 802.11bgn. They both have Bluetooth and a GPS. And they're fully sanctioned Google tablets. You get the Android market and all the standard Google applications like Gmail, Gtalk with video chat capability and all that good stuff. And they both work with Skype as well for video chat. They do not make telephone calls. US tablets don't have cellular radios for making telephone calls, and these have no 3G or 4G anyway. In terms of what's inside for horsepower, the Thrive 7 goes with the same stuff that the Thrive 10 did, which is to say what most Android Honeycomb tablets first generation had. That's a 1 GHz NVIDIA dual-core CPU with hardware graphics acceleration. And the Galaxy Tab 7 Plus has something a little extra special inside. It has a 1.2 GHz Samsung Exynos CPU with hardware graphics acceleration. And for those of you who are enthusiasts about Android stuff, you know that the Exynos CPU that Samsung makes is just wickedly fast. And in fact, the benchmarks show that. In Quadrant, the Thrive managed a 1613, which is actually surprisingly a little bit low. Usually we see more like 2,000 for Honeycomb tablets with that CPU, but the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus scored 3536. So we're talking twice as fast in synthetic benchmarks. For Sun Spider, it's also about 500 points higher, so we're talking about 1738 versus about 2360 on the Thrive for Sun Spider scores, where lower numbers are better, and that measures JavaScript rendering performance. Experientially, when you're just navigating the device, opening up the app browser, that kind of thing, they both feel equally as fast. Honestly, you're not going to really notice the speed difference unless you have several applications loading, a lot of browser windows up, or you're playing some pretty intense 3D games. Speaking of 3D games, there are some Tegra 2-zone games made only for Tegra 2 CPUs, and that obviously will run on the Thrive because it has a Tegra 2 CPU that will not run on the Exynos CPU. Now we're going to compare video playback capability for locally stored content, MPEG and DivX content. So you can see the DivX is playing fine with both. We actually had a little trouble with Toshiba. We played it once and it played perfectly, and then it kind of crashed trying to play it, so we had to do a reboot and use Gallery instead to play it without the crashing. But It's working now. In terms of video playback capabilities, the NVIDIA Tegra 2 was not the best at 2D graphics acceleration for video playback, so 1080p high-profile video is a no-go. Standard profile, yes, you might see an occasional frame drop on 1080. 720p is just fine. And the Samsung can play 1080p up to high profile absolutely just fine. Now, that's an awful high resolution to be using on the internal displays here, but in case you want to use DLNA on the Samsung or the micro HDMI port on the Thrive, or purchase a micro HDMI adapter for the Samsung and do that so you can output to your HD TV or monitor, then it becomes relevant. Now for other kinds of media, both of these guys have the YouTube player. They play high quality YouTube, looks really nice, and of course they both have Adobe Flash Player 11, so you can play Adobe Flash embedded in the web browser. The Samsung has a bit smoother controls for Adobe Flash controls. You know how those can be a little bit difficult to use sometimes on Android devices. A little bit easier to use definitely on the Samsung. In terms of other features, both of these have 2 megapixel front cameras. The Thrive has a 5 megapixel rear camera versus just 3 megapixel on Samsung. They like to use those low resolution cameras, but the thing about the Samsung is it takes very pleasing photos and pretty decent video despite the lower resolution. They're fairly good cameras, so you get nice color saturation, reasonable sharpness. The Toshiba has slow focus and shutter times that kind of get in the way of taking some good photos. But if you get the lighting right, it can take some very sharp photos, particularly good at outdoor moderate light shots. If you're talking low light indoor shots, not so good. But overall, I would have to say it's probably a tie. The resolution for the Thrive is better, but the image quality and the ease of taking a shot is better on the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus, and it has faster focus speeds. In terms of extra special little features, the Toshiba Thrive is pretty much what you see is what you get. It's got all the standard honeycomb tablet features. And Samsung adds the IR Blaster remote up here. This is becoming popular on tablets now. It's a feature we really love. That works in conjunction with Peel, an AV remote application. And this can control all your AV gear at home, all your home theater stuff, your stereo, your TV, your cable box, all that kind of thing. And it integrates with TV programming as well, so it's kind of what you're watching centric instead of just being a bunch of device controls, say like the Sony Tablet S. Nice experience and great for a device that probably spends a lot of time sitting on the couch in front of the TV at night. And this is what the Peel interface looks like. You can see you've got a grid of some featured shows here. You can choose sports, movies, other things like that. And then you've got your AV remotes here for all on, all off, so you don't have to think about switching each one independently if you want to watch something. So you're interested in 30 Rock. And then you've got your controls that appear right here. So it's pretty nice, pretty easy to use. I wouldn't mind a little bit more focus on maybe the AV controls, because sometimes you don't need all of your AV gear on or off just to watch TV, for example. But overall, it certainly is a really neat feature, and it's a selling point for the Tab for those of you who are going to use this in front of the TV at night while sitting on the couch. In terms of Office suites, the Samsung comes with Polaris Office, and this is a full version of it that works with cloud storage. You can see we've got the web storage shortcut here. You can create new files and edit files here, and this comes with Quick Office HD, which is a very nice Office application too, optimized for Android Honeycomb tablets, but this is the more basic version, defeatured, so you can only open up files that are stored locally, and you can't edit or create documents. So Samsung gets the point for having a more complete Office solution. Now here's a point where the Toshiba gets to pull ahead. Because of the higher resolution display here, we're looking at the same book, and it's not just that you get a little bit more text on the screen, because really we're only talking a line or two, especially if you're going to be using it in landscape mode, which you probably won't be, but the text here has more contrast and is sharper looking because of that higher resolution display. Now this isn't bad. This is a pretty nice, pleasant viewing experience on the Galaxy Tab 7 Plus, but this is like razor sharp, really beautiful. And now we've got them in a more natural portrait orientation for reading. You can see what they look like side by side. Brightness is pretty similar in both of them, and they both have about the same reasonably wide viewing angles for non-IPS displays. So again, we're just looking at really nice sharp text here, and this is readable, this is pleasant, but this is like, wow, easier on the eyes, very, very clear. You can more easily use smaller point size fonts when you've got fonts that are that sharp and maintain readability. So that's our Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus versus Toshiba Thrive 7-inch Android Honeycomb tablet Smackdown. Overall, the Samsung wins. It has that IR remote. It's thinner, it's lighter, it's prettier, unless you like that cute kind of rugged, ridgy back look that the Thrive has. But the Thrive does fight back with a higher resolution display. Samsung has a faster CPU, can handle high quality 1080p HD high profile format video playback better, but you do have to buy that little adapter unless you want to use DLNA to stream it, and you do get that built in here at least for outputting. Both of these are complete honeycomb tablets with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, no 3G or 4G, and they're priced at $399 for the Samsung and $379 for the Toshiba. Both are also available in 32 gig capacities, and both have micro SD card slots so you can expand your storage. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. You can visit our website to read reviews of both of these tablets, and you can watch our YouTube video reviews of both of these tablets as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.